Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Petrol landing cost rises by 88 naira in 1 week. That's what we're discussing right now. Major oil marketers represented by the Major Energies Association of Nigeria, MIMAN, have announced that a significant increase in the landing cost of imported petrol, rising by 88 naira per litre in just 1 week. This hike brought the cost from 797 naira to 885 naira per litre as of March 26, 2025. MIMAN attributes this increase to the country's deregulated oil environment. The new landing cost is higher than the 860 naira per litre that some customers pay for petrol at retail outlets like those of Dangote, MRS, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPCL. The price hike follows a decision by Dangote Refinery to stop selling petrol domestically in naira due to the currency issues with the NNPCL. The refinery's move is meant to avoid financial discrepancies between sales and crude oil purchases, which are now being handled in US dollars. Joining us this morning is OLABODE SOWUNMI, is the CEO CABTREE. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. Always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Lovely. All right, like every Nigerian, you're here, living here, and I'm sure petrol prices obviously been fluctuating for a while now, because there was a point that we saw it go to over 1,000 naira, and then most Nigerians, including myself, had a sigh of relief when it came up to about 860 naira per litre. But here we are now seeing an increase because of, the naira for crude deal that has been halted. I want to get your thoughts on this, how the fact that, the price for petrol, which is a commodity that everybody needs, for transportation, alternative source of power, and what have you, is not even stable enough for us to be sure of what we need to do. Your comments, please, on that.
Okay, primarily, when you put a commodity under the forces of demand and supply, these are some of the realities that come into it. And for those who have lived in Europe before, particularly the UK, France and all that, they will attest to the fact that petrol prices does fluctuate almost every day. It's probably not any different from gold or copper, which are also commodities. So what has happened in the past is that government has put in mechanisms in the form of subsidies, in the form of certain policies that enables a fixed price, which is what Nigerians are used to. So in reality, this is just market forces, how the market should operate without any government intervention, which many economists have been advising over the years. But I guess it was just this government that had the gumption and the guts to actually remove the subsidy. So it's basically a reality of life. I'm not sure there's anything anyone can do that is not artificial, that will just make the prices to be fixed at a certain price.
So I know that the price of crude obviously fluctuates every day, so that's obviously one of the issues or one of the factors, especially when we're speaking on market forces. But seeing this now, Nigerians obviously are not used to this. We're used to one price for the longest period of time. And now that we're having to deal with this change where every day there might just be a new price, how do you think this would impact, on Nigerians, especially when we're even looking at the availability? Because, for instance, I was driving to work this morning. The MRS station that I usually would buy petrol from was closed. They were not open, and a lot of people were in front of their gates looking for, when they would open and how they can buy this commodity. So how would that impact the availability of it, knowing that, we might not just be able to get it, or even at a price that is stable for a while?
Okay, so in terms of availability, the distribution system, the supply chain, I doubt if that has been affected. So that one MRS station is not available does not mean another MRS station won't have products. There may be many reasons why that particular station was closed. It could be for routine maintenance. It could be anything. But I doubt that it's because of availability of supply. Now, when people say, how are we going to cope? It's basically like saying, how are we going to cope if for any reason the price of cement or the price of tomatoes in the market rises? People just adjust. That's just the fact of the matter. But on the bright side, if it will add any consolation, when a market is able, or a country is able to work without government intervention, it speaks to that fact that that market is mature, and it speaks to the fact that that market will have the capacity to create more opportunities for people. But that's just a silver lining on the side to note.
I mean, a lot of Nigerians are obviously dealing with so much right now. We're grappling with the cost of transportation, the economy, inflation, so many things at the moment. And, sometimes you just wonder how this would reflect, especially if your income isn't, increasing on a daily basis, and knowing that when you have to go somewhere, if you have to go to work, that price would always increase. But my point right now is, how is this going to impact the cost of transportation in Nigeria? Because, let's look at the fact that gravity doesn't happen when it comes to Nigerian prices for some weird reason. Whatever goes up never really comes down. And even though we've seen petrol price come down to 860 at some point, people were still complaining about the cost of transportation, that they never felt any relief in that. So how do you think this would play, especially if this price is not fixed, or we just don't know how much, or the, let's say the average cost of what it would be like?
Okay, I think when people say that transporters increase their prices, which they do anyway, the key thing not to miss in all of this is that there is only so much increase that transporters can do. Because when we increase it to a certain extent, they will start having diminishing return. They will have less people as customers. And if they don't get a critical mass of people, then they will make profits. So don't get it. I mean, there's an assumption.
OLABODE, I would like to interject there, because for some weird reason, it seems like they have an association. So they're all, putting the same price, and the citizens, they don't have a choice, because that you need this. It's just a case of demand and supply. So you need it, you don't have a choice. And in a way, it seems like they force your hand. So if you're going to say diminishing returns, in a way, it just doesn't work, because there's this cohort of, this is the price that we've put here, that's how it should be, and that's the story.
Yeah, I understand you. The mission return on this case is on the long term. But okay, let's deal with the reality that is on ground, which you want me to address. Well, if the price keeps increasing and it crosses a certain threshold, definitely the transporters will increase their price. If they increase their price, that will translate to inflation across board. That's as simple as it is. But whether that will happen is not something, it remains to be seen. It's not something anyone can determine. I mean, you can analyze it, you can predict it, but the determination is going to be determined when the Transport Association executives meet. And they usually look at a number of variables before coming to those kind of decisions.
Okay. Like you said, what will happen next, obviously, is inflation. And right now we're still dealing with inflation at the moment, and it's not just on one hand. We're talking about inflation on every side. So cost of goods and services have increased tremendously in Nigeria, and especially food that's supposed to be like a basic necessity is super expensive for people, and they can barely afford it at the moment. So looking at these indices, right, how do you think the government needs to play? Nobody's saying bring back subsidy, but what can they do to mitigate the effects of this rising cost of petroleum products on people, on the citizens? Because the economy is not smiling, if we're being honest. But how can they come into play to just ensure that there is a cushion for the citizens of Nigeria?
Okay, I like that idiom, the economy is not smiling. But could you be laughing? But sorry, that's a joke. But on a serious note, when it comes to whatever economic mitigation policies that could be done. That's purely an economic matter. I'm not an economic expert by any sort of imagination. I just do energy. But I can look into it as a human being, as a Nigerian that is here. If transportation costs is a significant factor, maybe, just maybe, the government may want to look at some kind of arrangement with the petroleum, with the transport union. You understand? Maybe give them some kind of waivers so that they will keep prices at a certain rate. But all of that still comes to some form of subsidy somewhere or the other.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said yes, I agree with you.
Yes. So the thing is that it's a tough one. There are just certain things you just have to ride through. I don't know how else to say, because like I said, if you look at the countries that have done significant reforms, so you're talking about Britain in the 70s and early 80s, you're talking about China in the 60s and 70s, these people went through very, very strong, difficult times that even people died. Even in the UK, people died. So it's the idea that we're going to have these tax reforms and is not going to be painful on anyone. People will have, it's just not true. So and that's what I know from experience, and that's what I know from reading across board. But like I said, it's not my area. I'm not an expert. It's just what I see. So those who are experts with economic principles, who have financial knowledge, will be able to shed more light on prerogatives and privileges and whatever can be done to ensure that the price increase can be mitigated on the citizen. The effect of the price can be mitigated on the citizenry. That will be my contribution on that.
Well, I mean, from what you're saying, it means that we're in for the long haul, and we definitely need to tighten up our belts, like the president has said, But let's look at this narrow for crude, sale that has been halted, because I think that's one of the major reasons why we're seeing this at the moment. Like I said, there was that breath of fresh air when we saw the petroleum products get up to about 860 compared to over 1,000 naira that we were buying for. But what do you think needs to be done right now, and why was this even halted in the first place, knowing that Nigerians need this product? And if we are getting it from our own land, is our own natural resources, why do we now have to sell in dollars to Dangote, who's also a local refinery? So how has this impacted this? Maybe we just don't know the impact of all of this, and we're only just seeing it from the petrol price, the pump price that we see at the moment. But what's your take on it, the narrow for crude sale that has obviously led to this?
Okay, I don't know whether that's what has led to this, but the narrow for crude deal, when it was announced, was a 6-month deal. So it's just basically, it was just to the end of the contract. But I understand that this week that the government has intervened between NNPC and Dangote Limited, and they've called for some meetings where the government, through the Ministry of Finance, is trying to broker certain agreements. Let's hopefully imagine that all parties will be satisfied at the end of that meeting. In terms of Dangote being a local refinery, there are certain things you need to understand about Dangote and keep in perspective. Number one is that in Nigeria, the currency for transaction is the naira. The reason Dangote refinery can choose to operate legally and sell in US dollars is because technically it is not a local company, it's in a free trade zone. So even in reality, every product of Dangote refinery that comes into Nigeria is an import. So it's not a local firm by any stretch, by that much stretch of imagination. Yes, in terms of situation, it is situated within Nigerian land, but it is not a local company. And that is why a lot of the local laws does not affect it. Like if it were a local company, it cannot decide to start selling in USD. There are many equipment from different companies and different users that are imported in dollars. We are an import-dependent nation, and those people don't have any right to sell in USD. So that's the big difference between the refinery and the rest of the crew.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what we want as a citizen, you know, me being on the other side, what I want is to be able to buy this commodity at an affordable rate. So if it can come down to about 500, why not? But here we are right now. Anywho, I think at this point we definitely need to be looking at alternative, you know, sources. So recently there was the whole thing about the CNG, and we even saw where the president, you know, promised to bring about 100 CNG buses, even though we haven't seen that yet. But what do you think we need to be looking at right now, especially with the fact that we're still in a way dependent on petrol? But do you think for Nigerians, if we're looking for a way to have that stability when it comes to pricing for a commodity such as you know, fuel for your cars or what have you, do you think we definitely need to start putting in more resources into the alternative power or alternative sources when it comes to CNG and what have you?
Okay, I think there's a presidential committee on CNG. I think that committee sometimes need to be interrogated more by the journalists. But having said that, I'm not totally aware of the latest on the CNG development. I will have to ask and check with people who are there. But CNG infrastructure is not in any way near as robust as that of petrol. If the infrastructure were as robust as that of petrol, and we had enough gas that was being processed, it will do the job. But the reason why it may not be expanding at the level that you expect after the presidential declaration is primarily because all parts of the economy need to grow together. So in simple terms, they're not going to abandon health and some of the drugs that will be needed to buy and because of sports, or they are going to abandon agriculture because of something that is happening in aviation, nor will they abandon youth agriculture. You know, so the economy has to go together. So the issue at the end of the day is that there is such a basket amount of money, but that basket amount does not necessarily translate into available cash for every project in every sector. So what is happening in the presidential committee will continue to take place, and they will continue to make their plans. They will continue to set up infrastructure. It's for us to ask them that, hey guys, how far is your activities relevant to the circumstances that we face today? And how far is what you are doing important to our ability to get alternative to petrol? Yes, you did say that we are dependent on petrol, but the whole world is dependent on petrol. Everybody is dependent on petrol.
I mean, but the world is obviously moving. So you're seeing this come up. In a way, you can say maybe 80% was still dependent on it, but as technology comes, we obviously find other ways to maybe move away from it. But now, finally, what is your advice to people at the moment? Because, I mean, what you've said is market forces, this is what to expect, the prices will never be stable. But for people who are dependent on this, especially businesses, how do you see the next coming months to be like? What should we expect?
Well, to the businessman who's running his business, I'm very certain you grow your business from zero or from your business plan and you make it a profitable commodity. You will have dealt a lot with uncertainties, either in terms of supply or in terms of market forces or in terms of payments. But those are not. So those kind of people definitely will know what to do and how to adjust to the circumstance. When there is uncertainty, and in every area of life we experience some amount of uncertainty, you just have to adjust and make a plan to be able to withstand the storm. There is no shortcut, and at least that I'm aware of. And this doesn't require you to be an economic genius to know that. Even in the households, there are times you could go through uncertainties. It could be the loss of a job. It could be an unexpected procurement that you need to do. We all go through these things in life. So people just adjust. They adjust their standard of living. They adjust their taste. They adjust the things that they can do and ensure that they ride Because whether we believe it or not, or like it or not, this period of stormy uncertainty cannot last forever. At a certain time, the market will reach an equilibrium. We are transiting, that's the issue. So when we are transiting, there will be storms, there will be shakings, there will be all of those things. But after a while, there will be an equilibrium, and those who will be better for it are those who are most prepared for it.
Well, I guess all Nigerians right now have to be prepared for it, and we just have to tighten up our belts for the coming months or years maybe. But like you said, a lot of countries have had to go through these strict reforms, these structural reforms, and that's the way they build their country. So I think what Nigerians really want right now is maybe a blueprint where we know that, oh, for X amount of time or for this period, this is what you have to go through. But at the end of the day, you would definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. So if we could definitely see that, why not? Hopefully, all of these reforms, everything that we're going through, we would be better for it. But we just need to brace up and be okay, or find ways to adjust and be okay right now. Anyways, we want to say thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you on our program this morning. Thank you, OLABODE.
The pleasure is all mine.
All right, have a fantastic weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been speaking with OLABODE Sowunmi, is the CEO CABTREE, and we've just been discussing the fact that petrol landing costs have risen by 88 naira in 1 week. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing improving your overall health. Please stay with us.